We never know where life will lead us or what may hinder us along the way. But while every day can feel like one big question mark, it doesn't have to. With the right insights, strategies, and solutions from Western and Southern Financial Group, together we can look ahead to leave the unknown behind.
What's Pro Football Focus doing? Last week they had Brady. This week they got Brady. We're literally doing it differently from everybody else.
As a matter of fact, moving forward from this point on, I will not make reference to PFF.
Do you not understand that they are that way because you're Joe Flacco?
And you just like to discredit things that people deserve credit for.
That you can't possibly be expected to defend that.
Talk about the game, Sam. So who cares about what people think about us?
Yeah, I like football season, all the things that go with it.
Welcome into the PFF NFL podcast. Steve Palazzolo, back here. I'm back.
Yeah, in the building.
Along with Sam Monson.
Do I need like a mask or a hazmat suit or something? I
think I'm all right.
Are you carrying your plate?
I think we're okay.
Carrier?
All four kids were puking away, doing some stuff. Wife wasn't feeling well. It was
Don't want that.
Madness at the Palazzolos yesterday. My mom, actually, YouTube connoisseur, saw the thumbnail, saw that I wasn't in there, and she texted me, "Is everything okay?" And then she started watching the podcast with you and Eric.
Yeah.
And she was like, "Sam said you guys were all throwing up, so I just wanted to check in on you."
Old man Dan.
Yeah. So thanks for alerting Mom.
It's all right.
Of what was happening.
Anyway, look, that's it. That's your failing, not mine. If you're not going to alert your own mother.
I should have texted her and said,
exactly.
Hey, kids are sick. Prayers up. All right, listen. I'm back. We're previewing week 2. Special thanks to Eric.
Yeah.
So that was cool. He was good.
It was good. He made the transition from, planned guest to co-host.
Right. Yeah, that was easy.
It was a good conversation.
Yeah, he was going to be on the show anyway. Eric and I are going to be on the Chris Collinsworth podcast according to my Google Calendar. Actually.
Nice.
So we're going to be on there together later today. So let's go. Let's preview all of the week 2 action, starting with, by the way, we're live on YouTube. Give us those thumbs up if you're over there.
Do that.
We're going to preview the Thursday night game. It's the New York Giants at the Washington football team. Some of you will be listening to this after the fact, as always.
Forgot to do that yesterday. That's my bad.
What did you forget to do?
Remember, we were like, our plan was to start previewing the Thursday night football on the Wednesday show.
On the Wednesday show, yeah.
I forgot about that.
That's all right. You inexperienced host you are.
That's true.
I probably would have forgotten.
Well,
too.
all my run time went into the ad reads. You see.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Takes all of it.
A lot of bandwidth trying to time it up and say them and not stutter.
Transition as well.
Yeah,
I was 2 for 3. 2, I got right in there. It was a really neat segue, and then the third one I was trying to find, and there was nothing. So I just had to hard break into the ad.
Speaking of Kings, can I interest you in DraftKings?
Well, that's what I was shooting for, but it was nothing.
There was nothing.
So I just had to be like, yeah, okay, we're into the next ad read now.
Let's get into some Giants and football team. It's Thursday night. It's the football team by 3.5 as of yesterday. Believe that's still the line right now. Both teams coming off of losses, 0-1. Football team, high expectations, a Super Bowl contender per Sam. It's already Taylor Heineke time, though.
Yeah. I mean, look, my real honest to God, actual would stand by this prediction was Washington to make the playoffs. And then, once you hit the playoffs, anything can happen, Steve. We've seen that before. You can get lucky. You can go on a run. But even now, they've got work to do that because now, look, Dallas also lost. Philly won. Philly might be better than people are expecting them to, and the Giants didn't look great. So it's not, it's not a disaster by any stretch of the imagination. I saw Ross Tucker grabbing my Ryan Fitzpatrick, Taylor Heineke comp.
Did he?
Yeah.
Did he properly credit you?
No. I mean, look, it's what, concurrent evolution. 2 people can come to the same conclusion through entirely independently.
That's not how this works.
I'm sure that's what Ross was doing. But it's true. Ryan Fitzpatrick is done. He's on the shelf now for, I think, the season, though people are saying he might make it back. It's Heineke's show. And Heineke does remind me a lot of Ryan Fitzpatrick in playing style. Now, he's more athletic than Fitzpatrick. And Fitzpatrick isn't, insignificantly athletic. He can make some plays on the ground. Heineke can make quite a lot of plays on the ground. He's legitimately fast.
Right.
He also doesn't seem to make quite as many crazy decisions as Fitzpatrick, which is a good thing.
But he is aggressive. He does get the ball down the field.
So what I'm saying is that it's possible they've gotten better. Now, it's also possible they've gotten worse. But this is why watching Heineke is actually fascinating. Like, this is an intriguing thing to watch for Washington. One of the challenges they were facing this season is they were presumably going to be reasonably good with Fitzpatrick at quarterback, go through the whole year, come out of it wanting to kick Fitzpatrick to the curb, because that's what happens at the end of every Fitzpatrick year, and still having no idea what they have in Taylor Heineke.
Yeah.
Like, all you've seen from Heineke is good, but you weren't going to be seeing any more of him. So all of a sudden, at the very minimum, we're going to come to the end of this year and have a fairly concrete idea of what he is. Now, maybe what he is the new Kyle Allen, and he's just their backup long term. But maybe he is a viable option.
Well, Primetime Heineke, who did post, again, repeating again, on Primetime last year against the Tampa Bay Bucs, the highest grade of any quarterback.
Playoff Heineke.
Yes, playoff Heineke might show up here on Thursday night. The Giants, of course, the Daniel Jones stat. He's 4 in a million against every team in the NFL, except 4-0 against Washington.
Yeah.
So Jones just has Washington's number.
I mean, sort of. Like, one of those games, he tried to throw the ball to Washington multiple times, and they just didn't catch it.
Yeah, no, that happens. So Heineke watch is the obvious thing here.
Yeah.
I want to see this Washington defensive line, though. The football team can still get after it up front. They played, I don't know, the Chargers' offensive line, which is good now, last week, so they didn't get as much pressure as they're used to. Giants' O-line, what we saw last week was Nate Solder had some ugly reps.
Yes.
Some, like straight-up Olay reps against Von Miller. And then the one where Von kind of had this delay rush and gives him a little two-hand pop. And all 6'8", 330 pounds of Nate Solder on his back.
That was a genuinely hilarious play. Like, Solder has all this time to watch it coming and to line him up and to, shuffle, set, anchor, boom, just pop straight back on his ass.
It got absolutely popped. So the tackles against, Montez Sweat, against Chase Young, the entire Washington defensive line, I'll be, that's me every week. I pick 3 or 4 games where I'll be really isolated on the trenches, and I think this is absolutely one of them. So where are you going as far as your pick for Thursday Night Football here?
Well, I can't back down from the Washington thing now. Washington.
I'm going to go Giants.
No,
I'm going with the Daniel Jones trend here.
Washington and the points.
All right, I'll take the Giants to cover the 3.5.
Come on, Heineke.
All right, as always, we'll go a little bit longer form on some of the big games during the week, then we'll give you something to watch in every single game. Let's start with Buffalo at Miami. 0-1 Buffalo Bills at the 1-0 Miami Dolphins. What are you keeping an eye on in this game?
Well, this is one of the more interesting matchups because, week 1 is overreaction season, right? You come out of week 1, it's like, oh, massive overreactions. But all of a sudden, week 2 can land a team in some trouble. Like, 0-1 is nothing. You bounce back next week, you're 1-1, you're 500. Next week, you're winning record and you're cruising. 0-2 can be a problem. Like, have you seen those just massive headline numbers of
I hate them.
The playoff percentages.
Because
1-0, you're like 48% or something. You're making the postseason.
Because the worst teams generally start 0-2.
1-1, you're 40-something percent. But then all of a sudden, 0-1, it's like 8%, right? So what I'm saying is Buffalo is 0-1. They're now, or maybe, anyway, Buffalo is 0-1. They're facing Miami. And if they lose this game, Miami's now 2-0. That's a lot to claw back, even after 2 weeks. So
17-game schedule. You got an extra week to do it.
It's true. It's obviously not a must-win game for Buffalo, but this was a team that was supposed to take this division at a relative canter. Like, okay, we expected the teams around them to be a little bit better this year, but this is Buffalo's division. And if they start 0-2 and it comes at the expense of Miami being 2-0, that's a problem.
It's definitely a big game, no matter what.
So it's a huge game for them, and I'm interested in what we see from Josh Allen in particular. Like, week 1, he wasn't great, wasn't terrible either, but that's going to get people crowing, regression. And hey, we told you this Josh Allen's not going to repeat what he did last year.
I would never say such things.
Of course not. But Allen wasn't great week 1 last year either. It took like 2, 3, and 4 was where he took off and 90 grades across the board, and then we're suddenly like, oh, is this Josh Allen thing for real? How long is this going to last? Maybe this is what's going to happen this year. Last week, he was pressured 41% of the time against the Steelers, and they basically rushed 4 to do it. They didn't blitz him. So they were able to play coverage and get after him 40% of the time. Miami is very unlikely to pressure him 41% of the time. They just don't have the horses to do that up front. On the other hand, Miami has some pretty impressive guys in coverage. So what happens with Josh Allen in week 2, coming off a bad game where you say you're going to have less pressure, you're not going to be under duress as much as you were against Pittsburgh, but you're going to have to beat man coverage all day long against some pretty good players. Does he still have that in the tank this year, or are we looking at a regression?
That is the side of the ball that most interests me, because this Miami defense, you mentioned all the coverage players, Xavier Howard, Byron Jones, Jason McCourty, Eric Rowe, those guys all played a good game against the Patriots. So the Dolphins gave up a little bit in the passing game, but it was all underneath. It was their linebackers who were mostly getting attacked in that game. Josh Allen over the last 3 years throws, of all quarterbacks in the league, the highest percentage of his targets to wide receivers. So I don't think you're going to see a Mac Jones outing where it's, running backs and tight ends and underneath stuff. The strength of the Buffalo offense is their receivers. The strength of the Miami defense is their cornerback. So once again, we've got this incredible matchup. Allen and, Stephon Diggs, Cole Beasley, Emmanuel Sanders, Gabriel Davis, all those guys against these Miami cornerbacks who play a ton of man coverage. That matchup's going to be great. I wonder how Miami adjusts here. Are they going to look at Pittsburgh? Right? Because we always talk about Pittsburgh's not normally a game plan oriented defense. The Belichick tree is a little bit more game plan oriented, meaning they're willing to change their scheme from week to week. The book on Josh Allen has been 4-man rush, play coverage, make him be patient, take away those big plays. That's what Pittsburgh did. There was a little trickeration in there, but like you said, 4-man rush, play a lot of zone. I wonder if Miami changes a little bit and actually tries to force Allen into discomfort zone, something he doesn't like. So schematically, I think that'll be an interesting matchup here.
Yeah, I mean, I this is one of the better matchups of the week, and I think for Buffalo, it's a big statement game. They need to show that last week was either a fluke or a product of just a bad matchup. Pittsburgh's defensive front got after them and was more than they could handle, but they are a better team than that, and they're a better team than Miami.
So the Dolphins offensively, my track record of loving a player and mentioning him on every offseason show and having him show out
we'll get to that
is
later.
not good with Mr. Villanueva. However, got a chance at redemption here with Will Fuller making his comeback this week for the Dolphins. The Dolphins did a really good job last week attacking the Patriots underneath, attacking their linebackers. Myles Gaskin caught some passes that they threw to their backs. They schemed up a nice little touchdown for Jalen Waddle. Slot fade to Jalen Waddle. They threw the ball downfield to Devontae Parker. They used their weapons. I thought they did a nice job scheming it up, and now they add Will Fuller to the mix. You'll have Fuller and Waddle on the field at the same time with Parker, with Gesicki. Gesicki was quiet last week, but he'll have some opportunities in this one. We get to see Miami with their full array of playmakers.
The other thing to watch is, Tua can't do what he did last week. If Tua has moments where he just heaves the ball in absurd circumstances,
only had one come back to bite.
So look, Tua, my big concern with him coming into the season was he had the lowest big-time throw rate in the NFL last year, 2.3%. He's had 8 career big-time throws now, and he's had he's had more than 8 starts, right? So that's not a good number. On the other hand, he now has 15 career turnover-worthy plays, which is that number, or that rate is creeping up, 6.7% last week because of the 2 ridiculous ones. That now gives him a career turnover-worthy play rate of 4%, which is getting high. Now, if you're going to be that kind of player, you need to be way more productive on the other end, right? If you're going to be a player that puts the ball in harm's way as much as he currently is, you need to start showing the positive side. You need to start showing the Jameis end of your high variance skills. Alternatively, you need to stop panicking, hurling yourself in a circle and throwing the ball at defenders. Pick one. You can't do both. If you're going to do both, you will not end this season starting as the Miami Dolphins quarterback. So you either need to figure out how to stop doing that, or you need to get dramatically more productive on the positive end.
Do you see some elements in my original Jimmy Garoppolo comp where you've got...
No, because Jimmy Garoppolo's thing was, his mistakes are typically not lunatic, panicked, heaves. His mistakes are, I'm being aggressive over a dangerous area of the field, and I've thrown it to a linebacker that I probably should have seen.
I mean, either way, it's getting to the same result. Part of the comp was that Jimmy Garoppolo has always been a low, big-time throw guy, but when he has the playmakers, and especially when the Shanahan system is cooking, he's a high positively graded threat.
Yeah,
He's going to move the chains. I think Tua still needs to be a little bit more aggressive in that end, but this is why I'm interested in Fuller being here.
But I think a lot of Jimmy Garoppolo's mistakes and the turnover-worthy plays are systemic, not inherent in his play style.
You. So Tua's definitely trying to play hero ball.
Right, whereas now Tua is the cause of Tua's mistakes. I don't think that's necessarily exactly the case with Jimmy Garoppolo.
The pass protection held up all right last week. Theoretically, Josh Uche with the sack on Liam Eichenberg where he gets tripped up. So
and they're still massively protected. Like, they had however many dropbacks and like 6 true pass sets.
Right.
Like, that offensive line is still bad, but it looks better than it is because of how that offense functions.
And true pass sets for us, it's taking out screens and play action and moving pockets. It's the times when it's
straight
pretty
drop
much
back,
one-on-one, and it's
regular pass
more than
set,
2 seconds.
Block.
So, that's smart by the Dolphins to protect the line there.
Of course,
yeah. Real quick, what do you think of Jacoby Brissett, QB sneak specialist, the way the Dolphins are using him? I think it's kind of smart.
Yeah?
What was not smart is they brought him in for the QB sneak and then kept him in, and they go empty on the next play. Like, if he's not that Brissett's incompetent, but if he's the QB sneak specialist, you probably don't need him running the next play and going empty and saying, all right, now you're going to throw it. And then they had a false start or something that threw them off. I like the concept, though. If he's that good at, like a specialist QB sneak guy.
I mean, I don't think it's necessarily a case that he's that good. It's just that he's 235 pounds and Tua isn't.
Speaking of QB sneaks, the Bills ran a fake QB sneak pitch that got absolutely blown up on 4th and 1, which I think on the chalkboard I would think is genius. On the chalkboard, I'm looking at that like, oh my gosh.
Those are the plays that bum me out the most.
Why hasn't somebody thought of this? So
that's
Josh
really
Allen,
smart, and they killed it.
It's so smart.
Now
like, Josh Allen buries into the line. Of course, everybody's gonna, be attracted to that. He turns, overhand laterals it to the running back, but Cam Sutton just sniffed it out. I think it was Cam Sutton sniffs it out for a 5-yard loss. I would break that out again just in case.
The other one that I've always wanted to see is where the quarterback does the same thing, right? Buries himself into the line, except instead of like taking the snap, it's been a direct snap to the running back behind him, and there's just chaos pile, and the running back just pops around the side.
Oh, it goes to the back. Peyton had one in college where I think he had like a failed QB sneak. Like, he gets stopped, keeps his feet, and rolls out of the pocket and throws a touchdown somehow. I got to look that up. It was at Tennessee. It was ridiculous. Peyton used to be a natural playmaker.
Natural athlete.
He was, pretty athletic.
Did you didn't watch? Yeah, you didn't realize that the Manning cast was like on regular TV. You thought it was just a streaming.
No, I didn't know I could just throw it on ESPN2.
You didn't see most of it.
I heard the highlights, and then I caught a lot of the tail end of it.
It was pretty good. It was like they, I think, made too much of an effort to turn it into like a produced show, as opposed to just sit down and listen to the Mannings goof on football for a while.
Yeah.
So they had like actual segments and stuff. Like, no, look, just put the camera on Peyton Manning. The dude's funny.
Let him go.
The dude is funny. He's going to tell a story every 5 minutes. It's going to be either insightful or hilarious or both, and that's what you're there for.
If anybody listens to our podcast and watched that show, they got the fire alarm issue that we have all the time, right?
Sounded like the same alarm as well.
They might have the same fire alarm as us.
They were equally as unperturbed as we were. Like, nobody made any attempt to like move to the exits.
Is that real? Real fire? Do I need to move?
It's like, oh, the fire alarm's going off. That probably means the building's on fire, but we'll stay here until somebody lets us know.
All right, what are you looking for here? This AFC East matchup, Bills at Miami, and the last thing we saw is Miami getting 3.5. That's still the line right now.
I'm going to stick with Buffalo. I think they're still the better team. I'm going to count on a bounce back. The points as well, though. Buffalo to win, Miami to cover.
Yeah, I kind of like that too. I do think it'll be a good hard-fought game. I think if I had to, you know what? I'll go Buffalo on both. I'm going to take the favorites on both of these, even with the 3.5 both times. I'll take Buffalo again. Noted Bills homer here.
So Josh Allen apology form's coming Monday, right?
Yeah, I got the jersey.
Got the jersey, you got the form.
Jersey's in, I'm ready.
And then depending on how Josh Allen performs, you might have to sign the apology form.
Bring both.
Somebody has created.
He'll be fine. Week 1 might be over, but the season's just getting started at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. To kick off Week 2, DraftKings is giving new customers $200 in free bets instantly when they bet $1 on any football game. Listen up, because you don't want to miss this. You just head to DraftKings Sportsbook app now, place a bet of $1 on any Week 2 game to receive $200 in free bets instantly. Now, not everybody's able to do that, but if the sportsbook's not available in your state, DraftKings still has huge cash prizes up for grabs all season long with their daily fantasy contests, and they're giving all new customers a free shot at millions of dollars in total prizes with their first deposit. So there's something for everybody there. over at DraftKings. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use the promo code PFF. That's PFF. Pretty easy to remember. You'll receive $200 in free bets when you place a $1 bet on any football game. This is a steal, no-brainer. Get over there right now. Promo code PFF this week at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. Of course, you must be 21 or older in New Jersey, Indiana, or Pennsylvania only. New customers only. Minimum $5 deposit and $1 wager required. One per customer. Restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or in Indiana, 1-800-9-WITH-IT. Got it?
Mm-hmm.
Got it. DraftKings.com. All right, let's go Kansas City at Baltimore. Man, has this lost some luster? Chiefs at the Ravens. And, this was supposed to be the year, according to some, that Baltimore was going to knock off the Chiefs.
Woo!
And Baltimore is now in danger of going down 0-2 after that crazy game against the Raiders on Monday Night Football.
I don't think it's lost luster. It just becomes a different type of game. All of a sudden, it's not, is this the year Baltimore knocks off the Chiefs the way some people predicted? I don't know who would predict that, but
that's weird, huh?
All of a sudden, it's like, wait, the Ravens might be in real trouble. We had a whole show on this on the PFF NFL Daily. If they go 0-2 coming out of this, their run down the stretch is brutal. Like their final 7 games is 6 games they could easily lose, and the Bengals. And at that point, the Bengals might actually be halfway decent. Like that. This is a nightmare for Baltimore.
The North is tough, man. I mean, the West is also tough for the Chiefs. They're all undefeated.
Sure, but all of a sudden, Baltimore's 0-1. Those tackles are a disaster. Those tackles, Steve. Alejandro,
Ronnie Stanley as well.
Villanueva, the great, as you have been referring to him.
The average.
The savior.
I have never said the great. I said the average.
You have 1,000,000% said the great Alejandro Villanueva.
Well, that was in jest. I said he's great because he's average.
Okay. He's not average right now. He is, in fact, terrible
right
now.
He's well below average so far.
Yeah.
You can't just move the poor guy to the right side.
So this is the thing. What
I did, as a natural fence-sitting hedger, I hedged at some point this summer and said, well,
I don't know
of all the fits, going to a run-heavy scheme in Baltimore and moving to the right side is not my favorite one.
Okay, but the run game wasn't the problem here.
I understand. It was the right side.
Yeah.
Might have been the problem.
So,
Max Crosby absolutely owned my boy Allie.
Yes. So all of a sudden, like what was the interior of Baltimore's offensive line was supposed to be the problem, but they gave up the most pressure from both their tackles. Villanueva gave up 10. Stanley gave up 9. That's 1-2 in terms of pressure rate. And now the Chiefs are coming to town.
They were the worst 2 pass blocking grades too, I believe.
Probably, yeah. And all of a sudden, Kansas City's rolling in, getting Frank Clark back for whatever that matters. Chris Jones on the edge is still a problem.
Chris Jones is a good edge defender, just like he's a good interior defensive lineman.
Yeah. So now you've got, Baltimore's offense is in real trouble. And by the way, their defense just gave up like 1 million targets to Darren Waller, and now Travis Kelce's rocking up.
Yeah, and so the Baltimore defense, and again, I mentioned this on the daily because we did break down, are the Ravens in trouble? I'm concerned about the offensive line. That's clear. I'm as concerned about the secondary, the Marcus Peters trickle-down effect of putting the pressure. It felt like when the Ravens were just forcing some incompletions on Derek Carr, it just felt like at some point the Raiders were going to connect because the Ravens are still putting those guys on islands and
zero blitzes all day,
trusting their corners. And Mahomes, by the way, so Mahomes passing grade against the Ravens over the last couple of years, 88.3 against Baltimore. Drew Brees is the only other QB over 80, and that was in a 1-game sample. So Mahomes has been by far the best quarterback against the Ravens since 2018. Mahomes against the blitz, 90.9 against the Ravens blitz.
Oh, here you go. Ronnie Stanley's out, so Villanueva goes back to left tackle.
Oh, finally.
If he gets lit up at left tackle, you're going to be in real trouble.
I'm out of excuses.
Now you got nothing.
Well, he's been training at right tackle the entire season. You got to give him a couple weeks to get back to the left.
Patrick McCarry stepping to right tackle. I mean.
Oh, so that's official now.
Yeah.
Okay, so both tackles graded in the 40s last week. McCarry, I believe he may have been a college tackle at Cal, but he's been playing on the interior for the Ravens. I'm just looking at their depth chart right now. They don't have a backup tackle on this roster.
Good news
they don't
is
have like a classic tackle.
Their performance from the 2 this week were so bad that it probably can't be worse. Like
True.
Villanueva at left tackle and McCarry at right tackle may still be 2 liabilities, but no more than they were last week when it was Stanley clearly not 100% healthy and Villanueva getting his lunch eaten by anybody.
Yeah, not great. Did you get a heads up on the YouTube chat? Is that where you or somebody?
No, Beckett dropped it into the podcast.
Oh, okay,
chat.
thank you, Beckett. I appreciate it. Yeah, so we knew Stanley was questionable. Now the question is answered. He is out. By the way, appreciate everybody on YouTube. Give us that thumbs up, right? Just click that quick thumbs up. That's how we get this thing going viral, just like our Monday show. We got a lot of good reaction there. How do the Ravens?
This is still technically not done. The report from Jason Lackenfor is the Ravens are preparing.
They're preparing to be without him,
which isn't technically he will be out. But we've covered it either way. If Stanley plays, they're probably in trouble because both those tackles were horrendous week one. If Stanley doesn't play, they're probably still in trouble because Villanueva looked awful week one. And I'm going to go out on a limb and say flipping back to the left side doesn't turn it back into greatness.
Not going to help.
And Macari is unlikely to be a great right tackle. So, either way, that offensive line, massive concern.
Okay, so the line's a concern. We've got injuries. On the other side, how do the Ravens stop Mahomes? Like I said, a 90-plus grade against the Ravens blitz, which is what they want to do. The same question I ask about the Steelers, right? The Steelers came out of their comfort zone last week and played a different game against Josh Allen. Are the Ravens ready to do that, or are they going to stick with what they know?
Mahomes and Kelsey. Darren Waller could have had 15 catches for 150 yards against Baltimore on Monday night. The limiting factor in him being held to only 110 catches and a touchdown was Derek Carr more than it was Baltimore actually shutting him down in any way, shape, or form. He was the only target that the Raiders were interested in throwing to, and he still torched them. Travis Kelce, I would say, is the one tight end in the NFL that is a clear better player than Waller still as a receiver. So he's averaged 80-plus yards the last two times he's faced the Ravens. So, if they want to, they're going to be going at him every single play, and it's going to be almost impossible for Baltimore to stop him. And if they do decide to, okay, we're going to bracket Kelsey every play, clamp down on him, make sure that's not going to happen, then, oh, by the way, Tyreek Hill is on the back end against Anthony Everett, and that's going to be a 90-yard touchdown anytime they want it. So, yeah, all of a sudden Baltimore's defense is facing this rock in a hard place.
Yeah, it's a tough one, man. Listen to these other splits from Mahomes last week, because when you watch the game, and I feel like I tweet this a lot or just notice this a lot with Mahomes, we know him for his special. We know him for the special plays, but what makes him so good, again, you have to be good for 40 dropbacks or 50, however many dropbacks. He takes what the defense gives him. When he was in a clean pocket last week, his average depth of target was 4.5. So he took all the underneath stuff. He played within the scheme for the most part. If he sees a crazy blitz, he'll kind of read the rush and manipulate and get out of the pocket, whatever it is. When he was under pressure, though, average depth of target becomes 18.8. And that included that Tyreek Hill 75-yarder, which was all right, I'm outside the pocket. So within structure, it was dink and dunk all over the place, which is that's not a derogatory term. That's called playing quarterback. You find the open guy and you move the chains. Outside of the pocket, though, Mahomes is trying to create big plays. And again, the Tyreek 75-yarder is always on the table at some point in this game, which makes them so tough to stop.
And not only that, but if you're running zero blitz, if you're Baltimore, there's no safety back there.
Right.
It's Tyreek Hill against one guy. There's nobody over the top. Now, there wasn't this time either. But that's a danger constantly because you're exposing a cornerback who, unless it's Marlon Humphrey, is not an excellent cornerback against one of the league's best weapons every play.
And
they ran zero blitz 13 times against the Raiders. If they do that against Kansas City, those are 13 opportunities for Tyreek to beat one guy immediately and done.
And
touchdown.
What you see good quarterbacks do, 3 instances this past weekend where it happened. Kyler Murray did it, Russell Wilson did it, and Derek Carr did it on the game-winning drive, which was kind of a mess, of the game-winning touchdown. When you know there's a zero blitz, you know somebody's coming in unblocked, that's when you could start retreating in the pocket and just throw it up into an ocean and say, hey, receiver, go get it. And there's nobody better than that at a Tyreek Hill because he's going to outrun everybody. And Mahomes has that feel for throwing it up. Now, the Patriots have had success with the zero blitz against Mahomes, but it's got to be it's the timing of it. It's disguise. The Ravens like to just crowd the line of scrimmage and say, okay, we're coming after you. So I'll be interested if the Ravens maybe play more zone. And I would still rather make Mahomes be patient and do the 4.5 average depth of target thing, pick me apart underneath, rather than giving him the opportunity to create those big plays.
It's just not what they do on defense. Like, they need to have a complete shift. I mean, they were talking when they had Ray Lewis on the Manning broadcast, and it was just this. That's what Wink does. This is this defense. It's aggressive. They are going to come after you. It doesn't matter. They are going to blitz and live and die by it. And on Monday night, they died by it. And against the Chiefs, my money would be them dying by it. So to me, this is just interesting. Like, this looks like a game where Baltimore is very overmatched on both sides of the ball. But we can't. But a week ago, some people were saying this is the season that Baltimore can actually rival Kansas City and maybe knock them off their perch. Now, where are we? Are we overreacting to week one, or has Baltimore actually slipped that far?
Devontae Freeman's been elevated at running back. Is this the game, too, where you always say the run-heavy team, keep the ball away from Kansas City? I mean, can the Ravens put together those 15-play drives? Is that their strategy?
No,
because I can't trust the off. Yeah, but from a pass blocking standpoint, the offensive line got
their
wrecked.
run blocking hasn't been great either.
I understand, but you don't need to run block as well in the system, because it's a lot of unblocked defenders, and it's the scheme can still produce if they don't have the best run blocking up front. This is one of those because of the Lamar factor. So is it just a ground and pound game for Baltimore? They try to steal a possession or two in this one, save the defense. It could be, it could be that. They might need to play that way. By the way, Lamar, up and down game. He was under pressure like crazy, as we're saying. There was elements where he got out of it and made some big plays, but he still had the 2 big fumbles at the end on Monday Night Football. I'm taking the Chiefs after all that. I'm taking the favorites at 3.5 for 3 straight games. I don't love it, but I'd like the Chiefs to win this thing.
I mean, Baltimore needs to show something impressive in terms of a week-to-week turnaround to not be in trouble in this game.
Yeah, I want to see what they do defensively if they do.
Literally the only good news for them is that they're at home.
Yeah, that's true.
That's about it.
They have been playing. They have played the Chiefs in Kansas City, I think, every time. I don't know if they've played in Baltimore yet. So that could happen. And that's usually what happens in week 1 to 2. The overreaction is generally at teams that were at home who looked good, or teams that were away that looked bad, and all of a sudden they have a home game or flip it, and it's like, okay, things change. That is something that often changes in week 2. Before we get into the next segment, got to give a shout out to our friends over at Fantrax. Fantrax is free. Fantasy Football League Manager is the most customizable, easy to use, and feature-rich platform in the entire industry, and PFF is playing our leagues on Fantrax this season. Features multi-team trades, bonus points for touchdowns of different yardage, and you can create a free account now using promo code PFF at fantrax.com/PFF. Get a chance to win a trip to any regular season game this year for you and your entire league, plus $6,000. It's promo code PFF at fantrax.com/PFF. All right, we have Dallas, the Cowboys, traveling to the Los Angeles Chargers as one of our games of the week. Chargers favored by 3.5 as of press time. And it's press time.
Press time?
Yeah, that's what they call it. 1-0 Chargers, not for recording.
No, or in fact anything for the last 20 years.
Press time.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what they do with the newspapers. Chargers by 3.5. They're 1-0. Dallas is 0-1. Dallas is in danger of going to 0-2, but tough start with the Bucs and the Chargers. DeMarcus Lawrence is out.
Lawrence out.
And Randy Gregory is probably out.
Lyle Collins out.
Lyle Collins is out at right tackle.
Michael Gallup out. All of a sudden, Dallas is facing a lot of problematic injuries, and that's going to be an issue. Like they were, I think, vaguely impressive against Tampa Bay, even though that game was as close as it was because of Tampa Bay's turnovers.
Yeah.
Like, I still think Dallas came out of that with some credit in the bank. This is an offense that is probably going to look very good. But now you've lost Michael Gallup, one of those 3 wide receivers. I think Dallas's wide receiver trio, 1, 2, 3, Cooper, CeeDee Lamb, Michael Gallup, is the best trio in the NFL. 1, 2, 3. Now they don't have one of those guys. So Cedric Wilson is going to be tasked with stepping up into that role. What does that look like? My hunch would be that Cedric Wilson plays basically the slot, and now CeeDee Lamb gets an opportunity to play outside almost the whole time, as opposed to inside the whole season as a rookie and then splitting time in week 1. Now he goes to like a permanent outside receiver. Wilson operates in the slot. Amari Cooper does his thing. I still think it's a very good trio, but they're going to need to sing because Dallas's defense might get annihilated.
So in that first game, Dallas, dropped back 60 times. pretty much put the ball in Dak's hands. I have said on multiple shows this year, it should be Dak's team, put the ball in his hands, chuck it, score 30 points, hold the other team to less than 30. Obviously, they gave up 31, so the strategy didn't work.
Fail.
There were already people, it might only be Mike Florio, but there were already people saying, oh, Dallas got to run the ball better. Or run the ball more, or whatever it is.
So week one was a weird game because it was clearly a tactical decision of we can't run the ball against this team.
And that's how you play. That's how I think teams should be playing against the Bucs anyway.
The tweet that I had of Vita Vea, with the runaway truck just smashing cars left and right. Okay, if we've accepted that that's a fair reflection of what Vita Vea was doing that week one, now you can't talk about wanting to run the ball more. Right. Because you're running into that, right? You can't run the ball at the Mack truck that's heading in your direction. You will get splatted. That's just not going to work. And next to Vita Vea was Ndamukong Suh, and the defensive ends were playing well as well. So you can't have it both ways. You can't look at that destruction by Vita Vea, just bench pressing offensive linemen back into the quarterback, and say, man, what we really did wrong here was just not run the ball enough. That's just dumb. So they deliberately looked at this and said, we are not going to get anything going on the ground. We're going to run away from that if we run at all, and then we're going to put the ball in Dak's hands and use quick passes and make that the staple of the offense. That was a smart decision. Now, is the same thing true for the Chargers defense? I would say no. I would say you can run against the Chargers defense. They have good players. Joey Bosa is going to be a problem, but more on the edge than up the middle. So if they come into this game and Dak is still throwing the ball 60 times, now you might have an argument. Now you might say, okay, I don't know if you want to lean into this quite this hard. Maybe you can run the ball a little bit harder up the middle this time. But certainly for week one, I just don't think it's a valid argument.
The other element to that is the Chargers with the Brandon Staley scheme, where they want to play too high, rotate their safeties. They're
inviting it.
They're inviting the run. They only had the football team, who the Chargers played last week, only had 4 rushes against eight or more guys in the box. With the Bucs, when you're facing the Bucs, even whether they have 8 in the box or not, that's a defensive front. Yes, you don't want to bang your head against the wall. And the strategy against the Bucs, who play a ton of zone, can get picked apart. And that's what Dallas did. They did a really nice job, I think, in the passing game. It was a very efficient passing game. That strategy was fine. They needed to play better defensively. They did get some turnovers to make it closer. The defense played well enough to give up 40, but they had. It's tough to say. They earned the turnovers that they forced, but if they didn't force those turnovers, the Cowboys are probably giving up 45 points. I mean, that's the bottom line. So
this is exactly the same scenario as Dallas was faced with for the first month of last season before Dak went down.
And
it was hyper offense, incredible production. They still weren't winning enough games because the defense was just getting annihilated. And the other sneaky thing about all of this, as much as you want to lean into Dak being amazing and Dak carrying this team and blah, blah, Dak is quite turnover prone. Like for a quarterback who you need to, you can give Mahomes the ball 60 times and be pretty confident that he's not going to make many major catastrophic errors.
Right.
I don't know that you can do the same thing to Dak. It's still your best option because what is your alternative? But you're going to see some mistakes from Dak. Like the play where he tried to throw the ball through 2 separate defenders in the end zone should have been an interception. Like should have been a bad interception. Threw the ball right at Levante David, who deflected it. And if he hadn't deflected it, the safety right behind him was probably picking it off. Dak does that more than you would like. And there is still a thing that separates Dak from that very top echelon of quarterbacks. He might right now be above. Oh, did you yesterday's show? We had an emailer say, look, the Matt Ryan inflection point is just too wordy. It's too long. Can't have it. So his suggestion was the Ryan Rubicon.
The Ryan Rubicon. Mm-hmm. It wasn't going to be like MRIP or anything like that?
No, you can't. No. Look, who abbreviates things?
That's what Austin would do.
Right. So the Ryan Rubicon.
The Ryan Rubicon. A lot of people have been asking us about that. We've been saying Matt Ryan is the cutoff point between top elite 8 quarterbacks, elite-ish quarterbacks.
Elite quarterbacks that can elevate the team around.
Elevators. We'll call them, QB elevators.
Don't do that. Stop. No. I'm stamping. No. Nip that in the bud right now. Under no circumstances are we calling those quarterbacks elevators.
Not elevators?
No. Stop it.
Rather than escalators.
Stop it right now.
Okay, the Rubicon, sure.
So anyway,
Dak
Dak might be above the Ryan Rubicon right now, but the difference between him and Mahomes, Tom Brady, the very pinnacle of quarterbacks in the NFL, is he just puts the ball in harm's way twice as much as those guys
Tom
do.
Brady had 2 interceptions, and Dak only had 1 on Thursday night.
Stop
so,
it.
Anyway, I think the other thing, Chargers defense, Derwin is back. So at least I have some player
jinx it.
that I like.
We can't mention Derwin on
should
this
we
show because it will jinx him.
Okay.
You can refer to him as the player.
Okay, so there's a guy on the Chargers who's 6'2", 215, fast and the whole thing. And he played 12 snaps in the box, 4 snaps right up along the defensive line, right on the line of scrimmage, 19 in the slot, and 21 at free safety. The movable chess piece that I always like to refer to on the defensive side of the ball. This Chargers player, number 1 coverage grade in the NFL last week, flying around the field, and him and Brandon Staley seem to be getting along so far.
Derwin James is
You mentioned his name?
Derwin James is a player we mustn't mention. The player on defense for the Chargers, whose name must not be mentioned, is the player that Pittsburgh Steelers fans believe Minkah Fitzpatrick is.
Oh, don't bring it up.
Damn it. The player is genuinely one of the most impactful defensive matchup weapons in the league. He does everything well. He can make every play from pretty much any position on defense and rarely does anything wrong, which I think is a critical aspect of all this. If they get that player for the rest of the season, that is a Jalen Ramsey-esque change. It's a complete dynamic shift on that defense. We had a discussion yesterday with Eric about the way the Rams build their defense, and Jordan Rodriguez, is that her name?
Yeah.
She has, I think, relayed the description of this Rams defense as kind of the gravity that those two guys have, Aaron Donald and Jalen Ramsey, that everything revolves around those two guys on that defense. The player that the Chargers have and Joey Bosa, I think, can form the same concept, right?
Gravity guy.
Of everything revolving around those two on this defense. The back 7 revolves around the player, and the front 4 revolves around Joey Bosa.
The interesting thing about the player that the Chargers use is the same scheme, Staley. It's the way the Rams are using Jalen Ramsey, like stylistically, even just playing in the slot and moving around and the whole thing. And we've joked. I mean, we've seen the Keenan Allen against this dude one-on-one in training camp, and you're not supposed to have a safety with that type of size and movement skills hanging with a top 5 route runner in the NFL.
Yeah, every week now that Justin Herbert is a thing, people are wising up to the idea that Keenan Allen is a freak route runner, and that guy gets open against everybody. And week to week, you're seeing these highlight reels on Twitter of Keenan Allen just destroying people running routes. Derwin James in training camp, that doesn't count. We can't jinx him in training camp. It's already happened.
He didn't get hurt in training camp.
In training camp, Derwin James is going one-on-one with Keenan Allen on like cornerback reps, and not just like hanging with him and not being embarrassed, but like winning the reps, getting interceptions, breaking passes up. There are 3 cornerbacks in the NFL I would be confident have any kind of success against Keenan Allen in a one-on-one situation, which is effectively set up to be a DB loss, right? You go watch the one-on-ones in the Senior Bowl every year. It's a bloodbath. Like, DBs do not win those. They get wrecked. Derwin is winning them against the best route runner in the NFL. He could be the number 1 cornerback in the NFL, but he's not playing there most of the time.
Oh, man, I know. He's so good. Anyway, Derwin, that dude from training camp.
Oh, yeah. Training camp Derwin we can mention.
Training camp Derwin. Yeah.
Regular season, it's the player.
There's a week 1 star on the Chargers defense. Bosa getting after it. And Justin Herbert, we mentioned it, very good. He was kind of the winner of, he played way better than the stat line because he only had 1 touchdown and he had 1 interception. Really, and I think it was less than 7 yards per attempt. But a bunch of drop passes in there. And just a big boy drive to finish it up. The 2 most impressive things for me about Herbert, just how the arm plays. I mention this every single show. The arm is spectacular, and it shows. He uses it deep out to cover 2 shot. It's all there. But game management from him has been way better than what we saw at Oregon. Last year, he did have 1 or 2 bad plays per game. Like, he'd have a 1 or 2 really
This was a much cleaner
bad
game.
turnover-worthy plays per game.
Week 1 was a much cleaner game than we saw from him last year. And he was just better down to down, the in the pocket, the non-pressured stuff, all the routine stuff. He was just way better. Also, endless respect for the sheer majesty of that farmer's tan he has going on.
I didn't see that. No.
Have you not seen? It's like a flat line right here for his farmer's tan. I got quite one, but he's got his is bad. And the thing is, I can get away with it because I'm never wearing anything other than a t-shirt or a polo, right? When he puts on the uniform, it's cut up at the shoulder, and you get this,
so you're
this
seeing,
amount of white.
You're seeing the pale and then the...
Yeah, you're seeing the line.
Yeah, that's rough.
But look, kudos to any man who's prepared to rock that and just embrace it.
Who do you like in this one? Chargers by 3.5, man. The first 4 games are all 3.5 point spreads.
I like the Chargers to win and Dallas to cover. I still have confidence in that offense.
I'm going to say the same thing because the history of Dak and Mike McCarthy right now is a lot of points and, small losses, right? So call that again. Oh, man, if Dallas falls to 0-2.
It might not matter if Washington also falls to 0-2.
It might not matter again in the NFC.
Suddenly the Philadelphia Eagles are running away with the division.
All right, let's get to more rapid fire around the NFL here. San Francisco 49ers at the Philadelphia Eagles, pair of 1-0 teams here. Niners are favored by 3 here on the road. The Eagles were so impressive last week. How much was it playing the Falcons? How much do we buy into their defensive line? Number 3 pass rush grade coming out of the week. Jalen Hurts, the number 2 passing grade coming out of the week. Just some really good stuff. Touchdown the field. That touchdown that he threw to Dallas Goedert was fantastic on the scramble drill. Can Jalen Hurts back that up?
Exactly what I want to see. That's the huge question. He was really impressive week 1. I thought he looked different. That looked like a significant step forward. On the other hand, highest percentage of yards after the catch in the NFL in week 1. Huge. All of his work was receivers making things happen. I would like to see them be able to show it when they need it a bit more. Average depth of target of 3.6 yards that week 1. So you have to look at this and say, all right, a huge amount of that is that Falcons defense just being atrocious. Now you're going to go up against a better defense, albeit one that's still reeling in the secondary. Jason Verrett, poor guy, going down. All of a sudden, the 49ers have some work to do at corner. So it's a better test, but it is a test. So I just want to see, can Jalen Hurts still be that good when a little bit more is needed from him?
It's really a battle of 2 of the better run games in the NFL here, too. Obviously, we know about Shanahan and their run game, but the thing we kept saying about Hurts, raising the floor of the offense and him as part of the run, that was a part of this, too. As impressive as Hurts was as a passer on Sunday, it's also the running game. So that is more efficient for the Eagles because Hurts is in there. So I think that's going to be a battle to watch in this one. I want to see this Niners O-line, McGlinchey and Trent Williams at the tackle spot going against these Eagles pass rushers that were very good last week against the Falcons. Also want to see if we see more Trey Lance. Did they get to a point where the game got out of hand for the Niners and they didn't need the trickeration because they're treating Trey Lance like a backup change. He's a change of pace guy right now. That's how they're treating him. And you don't need a change of pace if you're up by 100 like the Niners were until they almost blew the game. Are we going to see a little bit more Trey Lance in this one?
I doubt it. I think Trey Lance is there so the team spend a day preparing for Trey Lance in the course of a general week. He's going to get 5 snaps every single week until either injury forces him in the lineup or eventually they make a switch to him, which might not come until next year. But he's there so that every opposition has to spend a day preparing for the Trey Lance package. I doubt they scale up his involvement much.
I got to take an underdog at some point.
Do you?
Is that my reasoning for taking the Eagles here? I think they're good. They called a good game offensively. Hurts had the lowest average depth of target in the league, most yards after the catch. But again, the grade was good. It wasn't all dink and dunk. He was making plays beyond the line of scrimmage as well. You've got the yak factor. You've got the run game factor. And they played 1 snap of man coverage. The Eagles are a lot like what the Colts were when Sirianni was there. What the Colts have been the last couple of years, this safe, zone-heavy scheme. They played it great against the Falcons. I think the Eagles have some elements to play some good football. So I'm taking the Eagles here.
They were impressive. I thought that they looked much better than I expected them to week 1. Another thing that...
Am I overreacting, though, because it was the Falcons
maybe,
looked like a mess, too?
But look, Philadelphia's offensive line also looks a lot better than we were expecting it to. It's sort of pieced itself together, and it's back. It's a top 10 unit now, according to PFF's latest offensive line rankings. I'm with you. I don't think they'll win, but I think they definitely cover.
All right, I'll take the Eagles to cover by 3, maybe the 9. I like the Niners as a better team. That's why they're favored by 3 on the road. So again, Vegas thinks they're about 6 points better on a neutral field if they're factoring home field the same way they normally do. How about the Raiders at the Steelers? Battle of 1-0s. The Steelers making their home debut here, 5.5-point favorites. What are you looking for in this one?
Are the Raiders going to use anybody else on offense? Like Darren Waller was it in week 1. Now it was working, so okay. But at some point,
I mean, they missed like the first 10, and then it started working.
Yeah, like the first quarter was absurd. He was at like 10 targets and 3 catches or something ridiculous. But you have weapons. I mean, they threw the ball late to Bryan Edwards, who's been getting talked about as baby T.O. and Randy Moss in training camp, and he made a play. So maybe use him more. And Henry Ruggs was running free deep in the secondary for most of the day. The guy can't just be a decoy all game. You look ridiculous. So how about we spread it around a little bit and start targeting the people that aren't named Darren Waller?
What about the Raiders' D-line? By far the highest pass rush grade after week 1, going up against the Steelers' offensive line, which was fine, but it doesn't lose the question marks that they come in with. Dan Moore was fantastic as a rookie at left tackle. Rookie making his NFL debut last week was good. But I think if the Raiders are legit getting after the quarterback, that's going to be an issue in this game for the Steelers.
Yeah. I don't think the Raiders' defensive line was as good as it looked week 1. I think that was very much a product of the Ravens. That being said, Pittsburgh's offensive line is probably not good. So it should still be able to get production. Like the tackles might not combine for essentially 20 pressures over the course of the game, but they might still give up a reasonable amount and put Ben Roethlisberger under some pressure. And now anytime that happens, I think their immediate instinctive reaction is to go to that quick, short, dink and dunk passing game, which is fine, but they need more than that.
I also want to see what Pittsburgh does defensively, because I've said it a million times here. Different scheme for them last week. Minkah Fitzpatrick was playing all over the field. He did have some nice plays, flash plays. His PFF grade was not good. And the reason for that, Minkah had 2 open field attempts on Josh Allen. One, he almost fell over. He fell over to the point that he actually didn't get in position to miss the tackle. So he still got the same grade, but he kind of he fell over. 2 really bad grades there. So an actual missed tackle on Josh Allen, one where he couldn't get in position to actually miss the tackle. And he got whooped by Stephon Diggs. Yeah, it's Stephon Diggs. He got forced into a one-on-one, and Josh Allen overthrew him. There were a couple other plays in coverage where he was kind of the coverage person and allowed. It was a difficult play, but either way.
The Chargers player would never.
No, he would never. I'm just saying, Minkah, they're using him in a way, in a unique way, in and around the line of scrimmage, too high. They're doing a lot of different stuff, but he didn't play as clean of a game as the hype. And just wanted to point that out. I think it's a challenging role, though. It's a more challenging role, and that's a factor in this whole thing. But I'm interested to see how the Steelers attack. And then don't forget Alex Leatherwood. He struggled as badly as the Ravens tackles
he got
rookie.
Schooled by Justin Houston in particular early in that game. He was just taking him to.
He's got TJ Watt. I mean, that might be enough reason for the Steelers. Like, my question is, do the Steelers stop blitzing because they just love Melvin Ingram, who played like crazy? So. They love Melvin Ingram and Alex Highsmith and TJ Watt. And Cameron Hayward had twice as many pressures as any other interior defensive lineman on Sunday as well.
I think the Steelers in week 1 looked at that game and said, look, in an ideal world, we want to flood coverage and let Josh Allen try and find spaces that aren't there. But we also know that we get the most pressure of any team in the NFL, which is also good. Now, which one do you do? If it's an either-or situation, that I think is an open question. But very quickly in that game, they realized this isn't an either-or thing. We can do both. Right. We can flood the coverage, and with just 4, we can pressure him for like half the time. So why would you do anything else? Like, this is an underrated, sneaky thing about this Pittsburgh defensive line. We're constantly crapping on Bud Dupree, right? Forget Bud for a moment, except to say that Melvin Ingram has always been a dramatically better pass rusher than Bud Dupree. The only question mark about Ingram is, can he be on the field for any extended period of time? The guy's been injured a lot. If he's there, They are way better with him than they were with Bud Dupree. And they were already the best defensive front in the NFL with Bud there.
And they're playing like it, saying, I trust you guys.
So
go
now
get him with 4.
Last year, they were one of the most blitz-happy teams in the NFL because it made sure that everybody was one-on-one blocked, right? And that way, one or two of them is going to win. Now they don't even need to do that because you've got T.J. Watt, who can definitely win one-on-one blocks. Melvin, who's winning one-on-one blocks easily. The 2 interior guys, like the front 4 can all win, and it doesn't matter if one of them is double-teamed.
Who do you like in this one? Pittsburgh by 5.5. Is that too much for a Pittsburgh offense? By the way, Big Ben, one of the lowest graded, second lowest graded quarterbacks. He had a bad fumble in the pocket, a negated interception that was still bad. He did make some nice downfield throws. You mentioned 2015 Manning. Like this, I'm describing 2015 Manning. There was some ugly, there was some bad, but he'd still float one into tight coverage and get it there. I mean, that was Ben on Sunday. There's enough. But is it enough to beat the Raiders by 5.5 here?
This feels like quite an overreaction line that, we screwed it up in week 1. The Steelers are actually really good. Let's swing it all the way back the other way. That offensive line against the Raiders pass rush could be an issue, and the kind of issue that changes the game a bit.
Sorry, I shouldn't have interrupted you, but Raiders played overtime Monday night too. That's a factor.
That's not good. Yeah,
longer game
and have to travel.
I'm gonna take the Raiders though. I'm buying into their defense being better. I thought they were. Casey Hayward was a nice addition for that. I'm higher on the Raiders defense than I was a week ago.
I think Pittsburgh win, but I like the Raiders to cover.
I'm gonna agree with both of those. Houston Texans at the Cleveland Browns. There is no overreaction here. The Browns are favored by 12.5.
12.5
over the Houston Texans, who just
the joint biggest line of the week.
They destroyed the Jaguars. So Vegas is assuming Baker's not going to throw 2 passes directly to Vernon Hargreaves. This week.
Probably a fair assumption.
Baker's taken a lot of heat for the end of the game interception. I thought he played a really good game up until that point. And we mentioned a lot that the Browns just did a lot of smart things as far as how they attacked the Chiefs.
There's something annoying about those plays. Like if you just looked at that play in isolation and didn't have any idea of the circumstances, you would kind of absolve Baker from it almost entirely. You're like, he's trying to throw it away. A guy grabs hold of that one leg that's sort of generating the force to do that. And when that leg gets taken away, like you can't, the ball doesn't go where it's supposed to, right? So it drops short, it's an interception, it's done. You're like, okay, that's just unlucky, essentially. But when you factor in the situation, you're like, the best quarterbacks in the NFL don't do that. They just don't.
Yeah.
And I don't know why. I don't know how something changes where they just don't put themselves in that situation. They don't allow that to happen, but it just doesn't happen. You don't find Tom Brady making that play. And there's something to that. Like, that is a thing that Baker Mayfield needs to figure out if he's going to take that step, that he gets the Josh Allen contract and the $45 million a year, and the Browns embrace him as the truth, the way, and the light within this franchise. It's just, like I say, it's very difficult to sort of parse that out and say, like, in abstract terms, that was just unlucky, but damn it. Why'd you do that?
That's most quarterbacks around the NFL. That is always what separates the best. And as much as we like to separate the quarterback from scheme and all that stuff and say, well, this guy was elevated because of the scheme or his playmakers or whatever it is, the quarterback is the one position where you dictate your situation, right? So in a 2-minute drill, you sent me a note the other night when Brady's running the 2-minute drill and they pick up 8 or 9 on the first snap and was like, that's standard, right? And that's just what Brady and Manning, and that's just what those guys do, right? They know to get 8 here and 7 there and not to press it until they need to and just understand the game. And that's why I do think the QB wins crowd, we're supposed to be against it because we grade every play and throw, and there's more to just the quarterback. But I do think the quarterback is, I mean, we know the quarterback's still the biggest driver, but a part of that is situational football and knowing your internal clock, when to throw it away a little bit sooner. All that stuff just kind of comes together. Here's the thing with Cleveland. OBJ's out again. Yep. Anthony Schwartz going to be in there again with his 4.2 speed. They had a plan for him. Jarvis Landry, the tight ends. Love what the Browns are doing offensively. I think underrated last week is their defense played a pretty good game. I mean, it's a 75-yarder freak play from Mahomes to Tyreek and a couple other, and then the punts that put them into a rough situation in the second half. The defense played pretty well. So I think that's going to be a factor here. The Browns defense is going to look good against Tyrod and the Texans, who ran the ball like crazy, and Tyrod made some spectacular plays of his own.
He looked really good. I mean, that's one thing to watch, homecoming for Tyrod, that Browns starter a couple of years ago.
Revenge game.
Yeah.
Tyrod revenge.
So, I mean, I'm curious to see if he can be good again in a second week. That will be interesting. The biggest thing, though, is like this is a game where obviously Vegas says the Browns are way better. Like this should not even be a conversation. Can the Browns just roll up and dominate a team they're supposed to dispatch without thinking about it? Like that, I think, is one of those
That's
things
a fair question, yeah.
that separates true contenders from teams that have the potential to do that but don't every year. The Browns are supposed to be up there with the Bucs, with the Chiefs. Everybody came out of that week 1 game against the Chiefs, and even though they lost, Cleveland, I think, showed that, hey, we're not going away.
They were up 22-10 at the half.
Right.
And everything was clicking offensively.
Yeah.
Right? All the playmakers were involved. They're running zone. They're running gap. They're running all over the Chiefs. Everything's good. It was a Nick Chubb fumble and then the punter situation.
Yes.
And then Baker throws the ball. I mean, it was literally 3 plays that completely changed the perception of that game. But the Browns' offensive line was as dominant as we expected.
Yeah.
Everything that we expected from the Browns was probably at like the high end of good.
Yeah. So
other than a handful of plays. So I like the Browns here.
They lost, but you're coming out of that game saying they're probably going to meet again in the playoffs. And if they do, Kansas City's not taking it lightly. Like Cleveland is a scary team this year. But these are the games where that shows up. It's like it's one thing to run the Chiefs close and scare them. But in order to get to the AFC Championship game, you've got to stomp teams like the Texans and not drop those games. Like you have to go out there and beat up a team where you're 12.5-point favorites against them, even though they showed some life in week 1 and maybe surprise people and maybe will be a better team than we expect them to be. So I want to see if Cleveland can go out there and just wreck Houston.
Houston might be better than we thought, though.
Sure.
If Tyrod playing a solid game, they played. It's Lovie Smith. Played a lot of zone, cover 2. It's Lovie loves his Tampa 2 coverages and all that, and Houston played a pretty solid game defensively and took advantage of Jacksonville mistakes. I think Cleveland, though, 12.5 is a lot of points.
And yet, 68% of the money is still coming in on Cleveland.
Really?
Yep.
Go check out PFF Greenline, all part of your PFF Elite package. You get all this information and our suggested picks based off all this great PFF data. I don't know. I'm trying not to cheat. I don't want to give away the Greenline stuff. This show's all about our intuition here. I'm going to go Cleveland, believe it or not, at 12.5.
You're taking the points?
Yeah.
You're thinking Cleveland covers the 12.5-point spread? I think they win, but
I need one more week to buy into the Texans.
I think they
resurgence.
win. I think they probably win comfortably, but God, 12.5 is a lot.
Yeah. The spread is factoring in all these things. I like to say, well, Cleveland was on the road playing the Chiefs, and the Texans were at home playing the Jaguars. Like the spread is factoring all that in and saying, yeah, 12.5. That's fair. All right, I'll take the Browns. All right, New Orleans at Carolina. The Saints are favored by 3.5 here against the Panthers. Saints maybe the most dominant all-around outing for any team last week. Can they do that again?
Yeah. Obviously, anytime you get to see Jameis Winston in this offense, that's something to watch. The thing I'm really interested, though, is Derek Brown for the Carolina Panthers interior defensive line going up against New Orleans interior on the offensive line, which is quietly not that good. Like the Saints have one of the best offensive lines in the NFL. They have arguably the best tackle tandem in the NFL. Ryan Ramczyk at right tackle, Teron Armstead at left tackle. That interior is kind of creaky. Like there's a bunch of people out there for reasons I've never quite understood that think Andres Pete is a really good guard, despite constant reminders that he isn't. Cesar Ruiz played a lot last year as a first-round pick, was never really expected to, I don't think. And
Eric McCoy's banged up too, right?
Yeah, so Ruiz's struggles last year was sort of put down to that, right? It was like, hey, he wasn't really supposed to be starting, and if he plays well, it's a bonus. And he didn't play well. Didn't open the season well either. So all of a sudden, you've got 3 guys in the interior that aren't really great, and they go up against Derek Brown, who wrecked the Jets' interior offensive line last week. Like there's a play where Derek Brown split 2 different linemen and then just drove his way, like had a 5-yard run up to bury poor old Zach Wilson.
Yeah.
Like, Zach Wilson's a fairly small, frail-looking quarterback at the best of times. Derek Brown is a monster of a human being. When that guy has like a 5-yard run up to, when you see the end of a drill, and there's a tackling dummy there, and like the end of the drill is like a 5-yard sprint.
The dummy just gets flattened.
Destroy it.
Yeah.
That was Zach Wilson last week to Brown.
That's usually Marcus Davenport type stuff. He used to sack people in college, and he was so big he just engulfed the poor little Sun Belt quarterback. But that Marcus Davenport missing this game almost assuredly. The Saints are banged up. Davenport's missing it. Marshawn Lattimore's doubtful, almost certainly missing it. Eric McCoy, doubtful, missing it at center. So as dominant as the Saints were in week 1, we're going to see Ruiz probably play center this week. So there's definitely some questions for the Saints. But what you mentioned is the Panthers' 4th worst pass blocking grade last week. So a lot of positives coming out of Carolina and Sam Darnold, and they did a really nice job adding using, as always, Christian McCaffrey in the passing game and creating mismatches. I love that. They did a good job. But it was with the 4th worst pass blocking grade last week. So the Panthers' offensive line certainly could be an issue, as you said here.
Yeah. I think that could be a big issue in this game. I still don't love the Panthers generally, but I think because of the injuries and the weaknesses that New Orleans has, this is kind of sneaky in their favor.
And Jameis, can he play? I mean, it was mistake-free football. I mean, he just was so efficient. Didn't have to do much because they ran the ball so well, but mistake-free football from a guy who's normally top 5 in negatively graded plays.
Yeah, and the interesting question is, like, how long does Jameis have to play like that before it becomes, hey, LASIK and Sean Payton did fix him?
Could be LASIK and Payton. Are you starting to – no, that we're like 1 week away from people trying to, like, trash Drew Brees' legacy, right? When it's like, oh, you lose Brees and it doesn't matter. The Saints keep winning and they're still as efficient and the stats are great and they move the ball and they've got no playmakers, but it doesn't matter and it's all Sean Payton.
Yeah, I mean, we are, but this is the thing with the start of every new season, right? When there's a new trend, it's like, how long does it take before you decide it's true? Like the Josh Allen thing last year. How many games of elite Josh Allen do you need before you decide, you know what, this is for real? He isn't the same guy anymore.
As a Jameis believer, I'm already in. 89.5 grade, that's who he is.
All right.
That is who he is.
Oh, man, I'm going to be so sad if this is the year he does put it all together and you were right. Just took you how many years now? 6, 7?
You just throw Villanueva back in my face.
Oh, that's true.
I'll take the Saints. Saints going to cover the 3.5 too.
I'm going to take the Panthers.
I'm overreacting to the Saints' domination last week.
I'm going to take the Panthers to win outright.
Am I looking at the – oh, that's next week's games. Where's the Saints? This thing updated yet? No, it's still 3.5. You're taking what?
Panthers to win outright.
You're supposed to hate the Panthers.
I do hate the Panthers. I just think that they match up quite well in this game.
You're supposed to hate the Panthers. The people want Panthers hate from you. That's
that
what they
offensive
expect.
line is still terrible. I don't like it.
How about this game? The Rams at the Colts. Rams favored by 3.5. A dominant outing for the Rams on Sunday Night Football. The Colts, disappointing week 1 against the Seattle Seahawks. So they get to play the NFC West once again. And what are you looking for in this one?
The Rams and the Chargers are number 1 and 2. And obviously this is Brandon Staley's current team and Brandon Staley's old team, which is trying to keep the same defense. They were 1 and 2 in week 1 in disguise looks, right? Rolling middle of the field, opens, closed, safeties moving around, that kind of thing. So they're going to give Carson Wentz a lot of looks that could be problematic. Now Wentz over the last his 2 years prior or post MVP level Wentz and prior to train wreck Carson Wentz, like the 2 most reasonable years, I think, to sort of get a gauge of where he actually is, had a PFF grade of 82 when it wasn't disguised and 66 when it was. So there's a big difference between when you give Carson Wentz the picture that he expects to see and when you give him a picture that he is surprised by. I'm curious to see if that holds against a really good defense and if you do get this sort of Wentz that just doesn't function as well.
That's a really good stat, man. I mean, and it's simple. It's just safety rotation. And somebody had a great, there's a screenshot of Peyton from the show, and he's holding 2 fists, and everybody's like, well, that's the universal. That's safety rotation. That's how coaches do it. You got the 2 fists. So you start with 2 high, and you roll to 1, and Staley and those guys do it extremely well. Definitely want to see Stafford again. I keep making the statement that the way you would describe the Colts defense over the last couple of years is they keep the ball in front of them, don't give up a lot of big plays. That was not the case on Sunday, right? I mean, it was the Seahawks played a really good game as far as taking the underneath stuff and all, but when Russ had opportunities down the field, they took them and they paid off. The Rams, if they have those opportunities, that's what they had on Sunday night against the Bears. They took advantage of them.
The Colts got by for a few years with like not good corners because of that defense.
Right.
But at some point, what you're doing isn't actually that complicated, and you kind of need defenders to be good. Like now, I mean, Rocky Sin at corner is a problem. Like, he's just not good. They don't have right now Xavier Rhodes playing out of his mind, in a bounce back year the way he did last season. So, like, they just don't match up well with a team that has good receivers.
Now, this game has a chance to be one of the most epic one-on-one battles in the NFL in 10 years.
Okay.
Ever.
What do you got?
Aaron Donald versus Quentin Nelson.
Nice.
We get to see Aaron Donald, the very best interior defensive lineman, against Quentin Nelson, probably the best guard. We'll just watch those guys the entire game. That's what we'll watch. We'll see if it has an impact. I mean, Aaron Donald impacts winning. We talked about the gravity factor and all that. Once the Bears were in must-pass situations on Sunday night, like, he was in the backfield every single time.
Yeah.
Over and over and over again.
By the way, was the point I was making about why you don't necessarily want to put Justin Fields out there.
Right. So Aaron Donald versus Quentin Nelson, it's going to be an epic battle. I'll be keeping an eye on that one. So another game I'm watching the trenches, but in particular when those guys are matched up against each other on the interior. Where are you going with this game? Rams by 3.5 on the road. So another 3.5, another road favorite. Buying into this Rams hype after 1 week?
I'm not buying into the hype, but I don't think it matters. Like, I think the Rams are better than the Colts by a good enough degree that even hype or no hype, they're going to roll this week and win.
I'll take the Rams. Against this defense, though, we might see that bad Wentz that you were talking about. Denver Broncos at the Jacksonville Jaguars. Broncos are favored by 6 on the road against the Jags. I don't know if this is meaning, again, Vegas thinks they're a 9-point better team. Better by 9 points.
We should have asked Eric this yesterday.
If home field is still being factored in?
Yeah, or how much? All the stats say that home field advantage is less than it used to be and has been moving in that direction for a while, COVID or no COVID. I wonder, has the Vegas line adjusted to reflect that, or are they still giving it the sort of 3-point deal?
In this game, this is a battle of, here's what happened last week. When we talked about Teddy Bridgewater versus Drew Lock, my answer to why they picked Bridgewater, our discussion, Drew Lock, volatile, high end. Teddy Bridgewater, generally better at just throw a catchable pass to these open receivers.
Yeah.
Well, that's what happened in week 1. Teddy Bridgewater, the lowest percentage of uncatchable passes. On the other end of the spectrum, it was Trevor Lawrence had the highest percentage of uncatchable passes among quarterbacks. Lawrence, man, an enigma in week 1 because, again, you see 2 or 3 throws a game that are absolutely special. But the thing that hurt him at Clemson is he had to, quick drops, and when he had to speed up, hit a quick out, he was missing easy throws last week. He's got to clean that up. But Bridgewater was the opposite. Played an efficient game, got the ball where it needed to go, and was one of the better quarterbacks of the week last week.
He looked really good. And there's also that thing we talked about yesterday with Eric about people like Teddy Bridgewater. Like, people want to play for him. And, you saw that clip of Von Miller on the sideline saying, those little pep talks, the things that Teddy's doing, that makes a difference to the defense. It makes a difference to everybody. So I think the team plays for Bridgewater more than they would play for Locke, even if I would have given Locke the job going into it. The question is, how much was last week a reflection of what Teddy can actually do, and how much of that was like the best you're going to see from Teddy Bridgewater? And, that's not really sustainable necessarily. Big thing this week, no Jerry Jeudy, goes down with what looked like a horror injury, ended up being just, quote unquote, a high ankle sprain. It's going to keep him out for a while. So your boy, Tim Patrick's going to get some work, but also KJ Hamler is probably going to be a bigger part of this offense as well.
He's explosive, man. He's legit.
That's going to be fun to watch. Like, they still have receivers and weapons everywhere. It's just you're going to be without Jeudy.
I'm going to take the Jags in this one. 6 points is a lot for me. I think there's a sour taste for the Jags after last week. I think I don't know how long I'm going to hold on to this Trevor Lawrence, Andrew Luck comparison. But again, Luck, throw for throw, had some issues early in his career. But the field flipping, the Justin Herbert thing I kept saying last week, Lawrence can create these chunk plays. And I think he'll do enough of that this week against Denver. Keep an eye on the Broncos, like Von Miller being back.
Yeah.
And he was the one who absolutely popped Solder. And against these Jaguars tackles, Von Miller coming off the edge. Keep an eye against Juwan Taylor.
I definitely like Denver to win. Screw it. Denver cover as well.
Ooh, Denver wins and covers. The 6. I'll take Denver to win, Jacksonville to cover in this one. Could be 2-0 Denver. Remember, everybody in the West won in week 1. New England Patriots at the New York Jets. How about this? Zach Wilson versus Mac Jones, the 2 rookies going head-to-head. We've got the Patriots favored by 6 on the road against the Jets. What are you looking for here?
I mean, that's
it, right? The rookie quarterbacks, right? Zach Wilson's first and second half splits were completely drastic, different, and so much more comfortable in the second half. Wasn't throwing the ball to linebackers, didn't fumble in the pocket. Mac Jones, as we mentioned on the original show, review show, one blip early in the game and then just picking the Dolphins apart with the underneath stuff. They did stall in the red zone, though. Like, he did miss a couple when he needed to in the red zone. So do you buy into the Belichick versus rookie quarterbacks stat? They're like 0 in a million, and stats are terrible and the whole deal.
Look, Belichick has always been one of the best game planners in the NFL, and he knows how to cause a young quarterback problems. Like, he knows what's difficult to defend and what a quarterback new to the NFL is going to take the longest to handle. So I think there's absolutely something to the idea that he makes life more difficult on a rookie quarterback than more or less any coach out there. So yeah, like, Zach Wilson's probably not going to have a great game. I'm really intrigued to see if Mac Jones can just have a clean game start to finish. Like, go out there, don't have the crazy blip where you try and Aaron Brooks it. Just play well, start to finish. If he does, I mean, it's getting very difficult to not be extremely impressed by Mac Jones, even if people are whinging about his box score number last year.
Mentioned on the daily today, the Jets corners, they weren't spectacular, but because I came in with such low expectations, they were solid.
Yeah.
But the Panthers did a great job of attacking their linebackers, and that's what the Patriots did against the Dolphins. I think it's going to be another one of those. The underneath stuff is there for the Patriots. Play a patient game, move the ball, see if they can run against a pretty good defensive front. I'm a little worried about the Jets' O-line. Mekhi Becton out. George Fant moves from right tackle to left tackle, and Patriots have a deep group of pass rushers. So I think that's a matchup to watch. I think the Patriots' defense ends up being too much for the Jets here. So I like the Pats to win. 6 feels like a lot, though, in New York.
Yep, same.
Patriots playing a lot of close games, too, with the post-Tom Brady era here.
Jets cover.
All right, so New York Jets to cover, Patriots to win. Tennessee Titans at the Seattle Seahawks. Seahawks favored by 5.5 at home. Now, that doesn't feel like would this feel like a massive number in week 1? I bet in week 1, when people felt better about the Titans, it would probably be like 2 or 3, right?
Yeah.
Pretty even teams. So there's an adjustment here after Seattle looked good in week 1 and Tennessee looked terrible.
These teams on paper heading into the season, I think, would have probably been in about the same place. And the Titans looked terrible week 1, whereas Seattle looked pretty good.
Who do you like? Or what are you looking for in this one? Tennessee and Seattle.
I want to see if Tennessee's offense looks as bad as it did week 1. I mean, that was atrocious. They, in PFF's ELO rankings, they have a better offense than Seattle. They're 5-6. Now, that obviously still has a huge amount of holdover from last year and what we expect this Titans offense to do. If they come out and lay an egg again and none of their offensive superstars fire, they're in trouble. Because, like, this whole offense was built on 4 guys. It's built on A.J. Brown, Julio Jones, Ryan Tannehill, and Derrick Henry. And if, like, multiple of those 4 don't fire, you don't have anything because the entire thing is hinging on those guys. So week 1, nothing. Like, Byron Murphy shut down Julio Jones from the majority of the game.
I mean, it's no Corey Davis is the thing.
Right. A.J. Brown took until very late to get anything going. Derrick Henry had like 9 yards in the first half or something. They did not get anything going. The dudes, as you refer to them as, weren't there.
It feels like Henry he always starts slow. And the Titans scored 16 points in their opener last year against the Broncos. And then before you know it, they figured it out and were really efficient. There was definitely something off between Tannehill and Julio Jones. They were off. So Tennessee's got to get back. I mean, they made Tannehill into an efficient quarterback by running play action and doing favorable things. I know we talked about that as well. They did not do that here in week 1. So I think Tennessee will look better. Tannehill wasn't a disaster, but the whole thing was just poor. Had a fumble on one of those play actions. The Cardinals pass rush got after him. Seattle, I want to see their offense against a different scheme. Tennessee's going to play a lot more man coverage. They played the zone heavy Colts last week. I thought they did a really nice job. And again, they had different answers. They were throwing underneath to backs, and they hit Gerald Everett on a underneath route for a touchdown. They have different answers this year. Trickeration in the backfield, unique variety of run concepts. I want to see Seattle's offense if they can keep humming, but it's still the same offense. That's DK and Lockett creating big plays, but I just think the rest of the plays when they're working underneath, and the run game is just going to be more efficient for the Seahawks this year.
I think they're going to be able to work this week because the Titans have no kind of pass rush. Like, Russell Wilson's not going to be under pressure. Or the pressure he's going to be under, he's going to invite himself, which is where he lives anyway. So
Seattle's issues were on the interior mostly last week from a pass rushing standpoint. And again, the Titans' second worst pass rushing grade, I believe, in the week against the Cardinals. Caleb Farley only played 8 snaps in week 1. If he's out there and healthy and good, I want to see him and DK Metcalf match up.
And I think they all came like at the end of the game when they had the backups out there.
It just might be a week where you take that skill set and say, okay, go.
Christian Fulton played really well, and yet I think I saw Mike Vrabel talking about how, like, singling him out essentially as a guy who needs to play with more physicality and more aggression and blah blah. It's like, he played pretty well. Like, I'm not sure how much you want to be ragging on him to be more aggressive and physical, but if that's the way he's going, that would lean into a Caleb Farley rather than a Fulton.
And on paper, if they're going to play matchups, a Farley versus Metcalf and Fulton versus
that's just a hell of a
Lockett.
matchup if that does happen. I'm intrigued.
I want to see that. 2 dudes going at it. Seattle by 5.5. Where are you going here?
I'll take Seattle to win and Tennessee to cover it.
Because Seattle always plays crazy close games, right?
Yeah.
I think I think Tennessee's better than they showed, so I'm not going to overreact. I'm going to go with what you said. Seattle to win, Tennessee to cover. 5.5's a lot. Detroit at Green Bay, Monday Night Football. Aaron Rodgers bounce back game. Green Bay by 11.5 here against the Lions. They just lost by 1 million, and they're 11.5 point favorites here.
Yeah.
Does this mean the Saints would be favored by 112 against the Lions?
Sure.
That's how that works, right? 11.5 on Monday Night Football. Do you want my Aaron Rodgers stat here?
Yeah, hit it.
He's had 3 games with a sub 50 PFF grade since 2016.
Okay.
4 games now. The 4th one was last week. In the 3 previous games, he came back the next week and had exactly 4 touchdowns and no interceptions in that next game. Now, most of the next games, I think one was actually against Detroit, one was Houston, one was another team that wasn't that good. He just happens to have bad games before he plays against bad teams,
the Lions,
and he bounces back really well. So I expect 4 touchdowns, exactly 4 touchdowns and no interceptions from Rodgers here.
Seems in this fair. Game. Yeah, I mean, when you look at the corners he's going to be throwing against, that seems like a reasonable expectation. Oruwariye got pretty much destroyed. Melifonwu is now going to have to be the starter because Jeffrey Okudah went down with an Achilles, right? That was what he injured?
Yeah.
So, I mean, Detroit's corners have a target just painted all over them. Rodgers to Devontae Adams, Rodgers to MVS, Rodgers to Alan Lazard. It's just bombs away.
Yeah, I mean, I think the fact that it happened in week 1 changes the narrative.
And Rodgers does have these games. Like,
right.
If there's one quarterback out there where you're not panicking after one stinker, it's Rodgers, right?
Now, you said, somebody corrected you and was like, well, Rodgers has never lost by more than 30. But you go back like a couple years ago, he lost by 28.
Yeah, I mean,
and 27.
30 was my
and
point.
29.
It was like games
they
where
had games. But when it happens in week 1, it's like, oh, it's Jeopardy's fault. It's the offseason. Now, I will say, if he goes out on Monday night and doesn't dominate this Lions defense, which he has historically, when he faces bad defenses, Rodgers eats. I mean, the stats look good generally. He plays well. If there are blips again, then I think you start to be a little concerned about the Packers.
Yeah, I mean, 30 wasn't, the point I was making. But, like, Mahomes has some ridiculous stat where he's never lost by, more than 6 points outside of the Super Bowl or something crazy like that.
Right,
Rodgers,
even in his worst games, they're still producing.
Yeah, Rodgers has these games where he's relatively blown out. Now, maybe that's a double-digit number. I haven't, like I said, when I made the point initially, I haven't checked this out with whatever. So maybe maybe the threshold is double digits. Maybe the threshold is 2 scores. Whatever it is, it feels like Rodgers has more of these games. And I'm only comparing him to like the other greatest quarterbacks of all time.
Right? To Peyton and Brady and Breeze and the whole thing.
My point essentially is that don't panic. Like this happens to Rodgers every now and again. For some reason, there are games where one of the greatest quarterbacks to ever play just isn't at the races. And even he came out and said it's one game. Like, we move on, we're done. Fine. But now this is the game you need to see the bounce back.
Right. And I think we will. I think the Packers will look better. I think the Lions offense, they're not going to drop back 70 times again with Jared Goff. Penei Sewell moved from the right side back to the left side, looked good. 3rd most positively graded run blocks of any tackle in the NFL last week. So the Packers defense has as many questions to answer as well. They got run all over, gave up the most EPA per play. This Detroit offense could have a little bit of success here, I think, against the Packers D especially if they play as badly as they did.
Yep.
So 11.5 for the Packers here. I'm taking the Lions, keeping it close. Packers to win, Lions to cover.
Even if Rodgers throws for 4 touchdowns and no interceptions.
Oh no, so I can't conflict with Green Bay revenge game.
Yeah, Green Bay wins and covers.
It's our Monday Night Football battle. Jared Goff, more Jared Goff data points here in the Lions. He was all right.
Prime time Goff.
He had some good, some not so good.
Well, he was really good right up until he went crazy.
The Lions were also in it that far because of onside kicks
and madness,
turnovers and the whole thing. Minnesota Vikings at the Arizona Cardinals. Cardinals by 3.5 in their home opener here. This is one of those where it's like, Minnesota's 0-1 on coming off a road game, and Arizona traveled to Tennessee and owns the Titans. Man, 3.5, is that enough for the Cardinals here?
Yeah, the Vikings could be in trouble. Their offense,
I knew you'd say that.
Like, the offense is okay. It's talented. Kirk Cousins, Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen, Dalvin Cook. The line is still bad, but just schematically, it's not doing enough to really help everybody out and make sure everybody's being put in the best position to succeed. Their defense has got bodies back on the defensive line, but like Rashad Breeland comes over to be a capable starting corner when they didn't really have any of those last year. That guy in his last 2 games has now been torched for 1 deep touchdown apiece. Now, okay, one was to Tyreek Hill. That'll happen. The other one was to Jamar Chase, who doesn't run like a 4.3. Is Breeland able to hold up against a lower level of competition? Remember, it's the Cardinals, so you can basically predict who he's going up against. It isn't Nuke Hopkins. Nuke Hopkins is going to be one-on-one with Patrick Peterson all day, which, by the way, itself is an interesting matchup to watch. But, like, can Breeland hold up against a number 2 receiver, or is he just cooked now? Because if he is, Minnesota has some major problems. And at the same time, you're like healthy scratch for a guy like Cameron Dancer, who was the only guy that showed any life last year. So, I don't know, this Minnesota defense might just be like, it stayed too long at the party at this point.
If you go to PFF.com, we have an amazing wide receiver cornerback matchup chart, which is exactly what you're saying here, right? When you have Minnesota going up against Arizona, you could see who's going to be matched up against each other the majority of the time. So A.J. Green and Bashad Breeland are projected to see each other 54 times. DeAndre Hopkins and Patrick Peterson projected to line up against each other 51 times. We've got Hopkins with that advantage over Patrick Peterson pretty significantly. The Breeland A.J. Green one is a lot closer, just because Green has not performed well over the last couple of years.
I mean, if Breeland can't shut down A.J. Green, problems.
Yeah, and the matchup to watch though, Christian Kirk, is the way the Arizona moved him into the slot, and this is my thing to watch. Does Arizona continue to use these playmakers the way they have? Like, they love to run slot fades, and they haven't really had a good explosive slot receiver to do that in Arizona. Now with Kirk moving inside, they created some big plays. Kyler Murray throws the fade and back shoulder extremely well. You keep Hopkins on one side. Rondale Moore's running the trickeration stuff. Arizona, whether they move or not, very difficult to defend with these playmakers. Yeah. And you saw that in week 1.
And their defense was good.
And that's the other factor. Chandler Jones had 5 sacks, 7 total pressures. Minnesota's offensive line, mid-tier pass blocking grade in week 1. Arizona's got the advantage there.
And it was mid-tier with them getting the ball out quickly a lot.
Right.
Like, it was way worse than that, I think, when you factor in how little or how much help they got from the scheme overall in terms of just getting the ball quickly.
I'm taking Arizona getting up big and then Cousins with a couple 2 or 3 second half touchdowns, sneaking back into it, but not enough. I get Arizona covering the 3.5 here.
Yep, I think Arizona is actually going to be a way better team right now.
If Arizona dominates this game, that's a big if. But if they come out of this 2-0 looking good again, you buying in? And they started hot last year, but
it's a repeat of last year. They were 6-3 at one point last year, looking like
Seattle. They gave Seattle their first loss, right, on Sunday Night Football.
Beat a 49ers team on week 1 that came out of the Super Bowl, a play away essentially from beating the Chiefs. They broke expectations with their first 7-8 games. Maybe they'll do the same thing. Maybe this is a team that starts hot. Maybe that's like part of their profile is they're able to do well in the offseason, be ready to go by the time week 1 rolls around. The question this year is, can they sustain it or does it drop off again?
Right. Can you make the necessary adjustments? Is it just a coincidence? We shall see. I'm taking Arizona. I'm buying into the Arizona hype though. Take them covering the 3.5. Where'd you go with it?
Yeah, Arizona covers, wins fairly handily.
You're just a Minnesota hater.
There are things to like about the Vikings, but there's a lot to not like. That offensive line needs Christian Darrisaw in the lineup ASAP, and it needs him to be good, which is no guarantee as a first-round offensive lineman. They need to figure out something on the back-end defense. Like, Breeland's getting torched right now. They don't have... I mean, even if both those guys worked out, your plan at corner has been to abandon the youth. There was the only positive from last year is that at least you got a ton of young guys, a lot of experience, and in theory that should behoove them down the line because they've got a leg up on their development. Now you've dumped all those guys, put them on the sideline, and thrown Patrick Peterson and Brashad Breeland out there. Like, what is that achieving?
I don't know. We'll see. Wasn't great. Wasn't great in week 1. Cincinnati Bengals at the Chicago Bears. It's the Andy Dalton revenge game here.
The Dalton revenge game.
Right?
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, it's also Justin Fields' watch.
Are they just going to give Dalton this game and then it's Fields' time?
You don't know. You either put him in now or you're not putting him in until, I think, week 4, and then God knows when after that.
Stop looking at who they're playing.
No.
If you're afraid of your quarterback playing NFL players, then you got bigger issues.
Yeah, which is why he's on the sideline. Like, this isn't some masochistic, self-flagellation thing where they're like, oh, we must repent our sins of the previous years. They're not putting Justin Fields out there because they don't believe Justin Fields is capable of protecting himself right now. And they might be right. I don't know. They might be wrong. They might be right. That's what they believe. So the fact that who they're facing is entirely relevant to when he gets on the field.
You said Andy Dalton's performance would dictate things. He was one of the worst quarterbacks in the league last week.
Yeah.
Is it time? I think it's closer.
Look, if it was
Andy Dalton is a factor, I think it's closer.
If it was me, I would start Justin Fields this week.
Yeah.
I would not have put him out there against the Rams in week 1. I think he would have been murdered. This week is a much more favorable matchup, and you'll answer whether you were right or not, right? The problem, I do have some sympathy with the idea of, look, people want to rewrite the history with the Patrick Mahomes thing. You're like, well, Patrick Mahomes may have been a Hall of Famer from day 1 if you put him out week 1, right? You never know. You at least answer that question, right? If you put Justin Fields out week 2, you now know where he is. Now, maybe where he is would back up, oh, whoops, we shouldn't have put him out there. This is a mistake. But if it doesn't, now you've got the next 15 games to have a better quarterback out there.
Is it too idealistic for me to assume that there's something off the field when you're evaluating Justin Fields and it's in the meeting room or whatever it is, it's a little bit of practice reps, whatever it is, and it's just when he's ready, he's ready. However you define that. If why can't a team have a plan and say we need X amount of mastery of the playbook, and you're testing him on this however you're testing him, right? Are you ready? Are you ready for these blitz looks? Are you ready for this? Are you ready for that? And and when he's ready, he's ready. I mean, is it too idealistic for me to think with all these rookie quarterbacks? Because I've said the same thing about Goff when he came out in 2016, said the same thing about all of them. The most important thing for this organization is that guy's development. It's not winning weeks 2, 3, 4. It's not winning this week against the Bengals.
To me, the question you need an answer to is, what happens if you have to bench Justin Fields after you put him in? Is that a total and unmitigated disaster? Like, does that get everyone fired? Does that lose you the locker room?
But that assumes that he's that far behind or that bad compared to Mac Jones. It doesn't assume the same thing should happen. Mac Jones, Zach Wilson, Trevor Lawrence.
It doesn't assume it. It just says this is the worst thing that could happen. Well, there's 2 terrible things that could happen if you put him out there when he's not ready. One, your worst fears are realized and he gets himself hurt because he screws up a protection or holds onto the ball too long or wanders his way into a sack from a Myles Garrett or whatever and just gets broken, right? That would be catastrophic. 2, he's bad enough at that stuff that he can't function at that level. Like, he's getting every play. It looks like Lamar Jackson against the Raiders on Monday night, right? He's under pressure half the time. He's got to run around. You
don't want him leaning into that style of play.
So, those are the 2 worst case scenarios, right? And if the second one is true, you probably want to sit him down again because you're like, okay, we gave you the shot. You aren't ready for this. You need to be back on the bench. So what happens if that's the case? If you put him out week 2,
he would just work through it.
He would
work through it.
But I'm saying, can you get away with that if you're Nagy? Can you get away with, like, you're already taking a world of crap from everybody on the outside hurling grenades on you for not even putting them out there. If you put them out there and then have to pull them back, is that just like your tenure's done? Like,
They're not going to pull. They wouldn't pull them back. But
that's worse. Like, pulling them back at that point would be better.
But what you're describing is already a failure of Ryan Pace saying, and Matt Nagy, really, if it's like, sorry, we created such a bad offensive line situation, we just can't play our rookie quarterback. We've created such a bad situation for our rookie quarterback that we just can't put him out there right now. See you next year.
I don't think that's true.
We'll spend the offseason fixing it.
How much of it is the fact that the offensive line is terrible, and how much of it is that Justin Fields is currently not good at this stuff, and the two of them together form a terrible combination?
Perhaps.
And my point is...
But if they had a better line,
they would
feel better about that.
Of course. But my point is the only way of knowing where that falls is by playing him. Like, you can get an idea and say, all right, he's not ready, we're not playing him. But ultimately, like, when he plays, he looks good. You don't know right now that he isn't capable of doing that until you put him out there. So at some point, you're going to have to, like, suck it up and roll the dice. My point is simply, like, can you pull it back once you've made that decision? Like, is that reversible? Because if it is, then screw it. Throw him out there week 2 and see what happens. If it isn't, if, like, once you've committed to Fields, you're in.
Yeah, you commit and you're in.
Then you might have to wait a while because they run a pretty murderer's row, pretty nasty gauntlet of, like, elite pass rushers.
Bengals on the other side, run-heavy attack in week 1 against the Vikings. Do want to see them open it up a little bit more with Burrow. He had, some good, some bad. I think I said the luckiest pass of the week that was thrown right to a slot corner that got caught. He missed a touchdown, but he had the nice deep ball, threw a nice deep out, had some good stuff in there.
Yep.
But he was also under a lot of pressure. You got Khalil Mack on the other side, so pressure watch still this week with Joe Burrow. But I like Burrow on the road here. I like him on the road making plays. I'm assuming Dalton plays the majority of the game, which makes me think it's the Bengals. This could be the week, though. Fields comes in relief. I mean, when it happens, it's going to be Fields comes in relief and goes, like 8 for 15 with 2 touchdowns.
Yeah.
And it's it's a little rough. And there's 2 spectacular touchdowns in there, and then it becomes Fields' team.
This could be the Baker game when he came in, halftime against the Jets.
And if it's not, I will predict it every week for the rest of the season until it happens. This is the week Justin Fields comes in and sparks the Bears with 2 touchdowns, but it's not enough against the hometown Cincinnati Bengals, who moved to 2-0 with a win and a cover as 2.5-point underdogs at Chicago.
All right, I like that. I'm going to say Fields comes in, rescues this, and the Bears not only cover but win.
Okay.
They're going to be down by 10 points. Dalton's going to be playing like crap. Fields comes in, saves it.
You just need the legend to grow. The legend of Justin Fields to grow more and more. Let's wrap it up. This is it, right? Last game?
Yep.
Falcons at the Bucs. Bucs by 12.5.
Yeah.
And Falcons coming off a demoralizing defeat.
12.5 is not enough.
Feels low. Let's not forget now that these 2 teams played 2 of the last 3 weeks of last season. In Atlanta last year, the Falcons were up 17-0, I believe, at the half. And then that was when Brady went on that ridiculous run where he threw like an NFL record yardage in 4 straight quarters or whatever it was.
Yep.
And he carried that over into their Week 17 matchup. The Bucs are also going for the 3rd time in history, winning every game with more than 30 points. The only other 2 times that happened, 2007 Patriots, 2010 Patriots. So Brady's been at the helm of teams scoring a lot of points and winning a lot of games historically.
Wait, what? What is that they're going for?
An 8-game winning streak while scoring at least...
An
8-game winning streak while scoring...
Right.
Sorry, it's a 9-game winning streak while scoring at least 30 points in every game. And Brady's the only quarterback to lead teams to do that in the past. They would do that if they score 30-plus here in this game, which I expect. Tampa Bay, tough to cover. Looked sharp in week 1. The only thing that kept it close was turnovers.
Yeah. Using PFF's ELO rankings, which is in green line, this is the number 1 offense in the NFL against the number 30 defense in the NFL. And that number 30 number might be soft based off what we saw in week 1. This could be an absolute beatdown.
Yeah. So offensively for the Falcons, I made the point last week, which was completely wrong, that if, when Matt Ryan has success, when you face a zone heavy attack and he can just, pick you apart and make good decision after good decision, it didn't work at all last week. But the Falcons weren't aggressive at all. He had one of the lowest average depths of target last week, which again, it's when you're facing zone, but they weren't getting anything going against the Eagles. The pass rush got to them up front in Atlanta. Pass blocking was horrible. Jalen Mayfield got owned. That's going to be potentially a mess against Vita Vea and Ndamukong Suh. There's just mismatches everywhere in this game.
There's not a lot to like from a Falcons perspective. And this is another one where even though the line is 12.5, all the money is still coming in on Tampa Bay. Like this, there's nothing to like for the Falcons. Nothing. This, although, if you're looking for, this is one of those games, right? Every year in the NFL, there's a game where there is no reason that one team is even in it. Nothing. No reason. And somehow they end up.
It's always Atlanta.
Yeah,
when Atlanta
frequently the dead whale.
Remember when they owned the famous dead whale game when they owned the Saints? 2019.
Even knowing that happens every year, I can't see a scenario where this game is that game. But it's a division game, I guess. Matt Ryan is still Matt Ryan, maybe. But no, they're going to get killed.
Need more Kyle Pitts from Atlanta. Yeah. Only 4 catches last week. Need more Kyle Pitts. As far as our matchup chart goes, you're going to see a lot of Chris Godwin versus Isaiah Oliver, Mike Evans versus Fabian Moreau, Antonio Brown versus A.J. Terrell. I mean, all of these things, the Bucs are just so loaded. They all favor the Bucs here. Mike Evans wasn't as big of a part of the offense. I feel like they just pick their spots when they want to get him involved. So just keep an eye on Mike Evans running up the seam a couple times and getting him involved early here. I think the Bucs are just too powerful, and I think the 12.5 does feel low. I agree. So Bucs win by a lot here at home against the Falcons.
Yep.
Bucs are one of the few teams that get to start at home twice, by the way. Usually flip, which means you're going to have a lot more road games, Get the 2 home games out of the way early on for the defending Super Bowl champs. All right, that's it. Previewed every Week 2 game. Appreciate everybody for tuning in. We'll be back here again Monday morning reviewing all of the Week 2 games. If you didn't hear Dr. Eric Eager, great show yesterday, filling in for me while we were having some issues, the Palazzolo home. But we are back better than ever. PFF.com, PFF Elite, and PFF Edge. I misspoke to somebody on Twitter, and I apologize. When you do get PFF Edge, you do get access to the grades. So when you sign up for Edge, the grades are there. They're woven into the product. If you want the full grades and stats and everything, the facet grades, and that's all of our premium stats, and that's a part of the Elite package. So Edge gets you a snippet of the grades. Elite gives you, the everything, all the stats and grades, plus Green Line, and plus all of our best fantasy tools. So sorry about that. I'll never be wrong again, I promise.
Oh, okay.
All right.
Well, that'll help.
And we'll do the Josh Allen thing on Monday morning.
Yes.
Don't forget to subscribe to the daily. Oh, let me give away a free Edge subscription.
Oh, you're going to do that right now?
Yeah, I had somebody.
Okay.
Let's see. Let me find it. Talk.
I wasn't prepared to talk. I'm not.
Here it is. Okay. Jeremy McKinley, you win. Sent us a screenshot of the PFF Daily subscription and the PFF NFL podcast. We appreciate that. So Jeremy McKinley, we'll send you an email. You get a free PFF Edge. You do that. You send at NFLpodcast@pff.com. Send a screenshot that you subscribe to both shows, and you'll be in the running. Not everybody gets it, but we get to pick one every now and again. So Jeremy McKinley, you win. All right, guys. Thanks to everybody for tuning in. Thanks to everybody on YouTube. Hit that thumbs up before you leave. Hit that thumbs up right now. All of you, right before you leave. Spread the word on YouTube. Thanks to everybody. See you Monday.
Easy.
That was a quick outro.